Action figure reboots. Sponsored by Pearson Art.
Hello, and welcome back. Today we're looking at a Mego Cheron, released in 1975 as part of the Star Trek Alien series. This is one figure that I distinctly remember seeing in the stores when it first came out, and that was because of the headpiece. When I first saw it, I thought, wow, this actually would have been a great head to use for the Phantom. I've actually seen a custom Phantom using this head, and I think it came out really good. I still don't understand why they made it this way. As a kid, I didn't know how licensing worked, and for all I know, it might have been made to be the Phantom, and maybe the deal fell through. I don't know. But years later, when I finally saw the Star Trek episode that this character was based on, they looked like this. And because of the headpiece, I remembered this figure, and I remember thinking at the time that they were really off the mark. They got the black and white part right, but these characters had hair. There was no headpiece. And that was even more confusing. They added something to a character that didn't need it, and they had the perfect head for a character that they didn't make. If you look at the artwork on the packaging, you'll see that the artist kind of did give him hair. You can see the ears there. It's smooth, and I guess it's something like Mego made, but something got lost in the translation, definitely. This head actually would have made a little bit more sense. But then, years later, a lot of years later, I found out that this head was actually repurposed from this. For those of you who don't know, this is Amigo Alan Verdon. Back in the 1970s, there was a Planet of the Apes television series, and one of the characters on the show was named Alan Verdon, and he was played by Ron Harper. Mego did an action figure line based on this series, but I don't know how successful it was. The show only ran for one season, but looking back on it today, I wonder why they went through all the trouble of repurposing this head when they could have just used this. I could kind of understand Mego's reluctance to not use this head because it was already being used as another licensed product. But as I mentioned before, I don't think the line was very popular, and I really don't think anybody would have noticed. Probably not even Ron Harper. In the Star Trek episode, these characters had names, but when Mego put out their figure, they just called him Cheron. So this figure really didn't need to look like either of those two. It just needed to look like a Cheron. So when it came time to put together this figure, I realized that I didn't have a Cheron head, but I did have one of these. I had gotten this for something that didn't really work out, but I think in this instance, this head will be perfect. So I ended up making a mold of the head that I had and cast it in white. This resin only comes in white and clear, but it really worked out nice because Mego made their Charon head in white and then painted it, which is what I want to do here. So once that was done, I took the head and I modified it just a bit, and this is what I came up with. I like the way this came out. I think it looks a lot more screen accurate, especially without the headpiece. So this is the one I'm going to go with. So that takes care of the head. For the body, I'm just going to use the standard Type 1. Since I'm changing the head to look more screen accurate, I'd also like to change the suit as well. I think this suit is kind of cool, but I'm going to opt for something different. Instead, I'm going to go for this gray bodysuit. This is from Amigo Tin Man, and I think it's perfect for this figure. For the boots, I'm going to go with these. These are actually from an Action Jackson set. They say that they're silver, but they kind of look a little bit more gray to me, so I'm going to go with these. In the original episode, the Charon actually wore these gray gloves, but instead of those, I'm going to go with Migo's original design and use these black and white hands. All right, we got all the parts. Let's put it together and see what we got. Okay, I like this. I like the way this came out. I thought it looked a little bit sparse, so I added a belt at the last minute. It's really nothing fancy, but I think it adds a little bit to it. I tried to keep it somewhat simple like the original. I'm quite happy with this. I know it differs a lot from what Mego made, but I kind of like that this looks more like the TV show. I went a little simpler on the eyes, and that's because the original had eyebrows, but you could really only see it on one side, and the characters on the show didn't have them at all, so I just left them out. So overall, I'm quite pleased with this, and I'm happy to add it to my collection. And there's also another figure that I would like to add to my collection, and that would be the Keeper, also released in 1975 as part of the Star Trek Alien series. This figure was actually a mixture of two aliens from the Star Trek series. The head sculpt was loosely based on this character. He was from the Corbinite maneuver and could be seen in the closing credits of most episodes. That's how I kind of recognized him. But the name, The Keeper, was based on this character, who was featured in a pilot that was scrapped but used in a later episode, which was a bit confusing because Mego did make a figure of a character called Talos, or the Talosian, in their second Alien series, which, even though the suit was wrong, the head and the size were dead on. I do like this head sculpt, but I wish it was a little bit closer to the original design. The head sculpts that Mego did for the Star Trek line were really good, but I kind of feel that this one missed the landing a bit. I still like it though, and I'm definitely going to use it. So that's what we'll start with, the head. I picked this up by itself actually, and I'm really not going to change anything. There really isn't anything I could do to it, so I'm just going to keep it as is. So we have the head for this figure. Now we need the body. For that, I'm going to do a Type 1, Type 2 hybrid. I'm going to use this chest piece that's modified to be compatible with this lower half of a Type 2 body. For the arms, I'm going to use these. These are from an LJN figure. LJN was a competitor to Mego back in the 70s. The bodies were similar. These arms are a bit longer, and there's a reason why I'm going to use them, but I'll get to that in a bit. As far as the robe is concerned, I'm not going to use this. If you look at the character that this figure is loosely based on, you'll see that the robe that he wears is much different. So I'm going to go with something more along those lines. So for that, I'm going to go with the reproduction of the robe that this character wore from the Space 1999 line. This is actually pretty good, and it's one of the rare instances where the reproduction is better than the vintage version. The sleeves are actually really long on this, and that's the reason why I'm using those LJN arms. You still can't really see them, but they stick out a little bit further than original Mego arms would. I'm also going to be adding boots to this figure. Mego's version of this figure didn't come with any boots, but I had these reproduction Romulan boots, and the tips were cut off, and I really didn't know where else to use them, so I thought I would just include them on him. So, alright, once again, we have all the parts, so let's put it together and see what we got. Alright, I'm liking this. I really like the way the robe looks. I think it's a lot truer to the original concept, and I really like the fit. I know that the color's not right. It should be black or a charcoal gray at the very least. But the color is kind of secondary to me if the style is right. And I'm fine with the head as well. I said earlier that I wish that it was a little bit closer to the original design, but I'm happy with this. You might say that this one is a keeper. I'm happy with both these figures, and I'm glad to add them to my collection. These were a lot of fun. So I guess that about wraps it up for this episode. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, share, comment. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, always remember and never forget, think outside the box.